Are you a morning person? Or are you a person who just can't stand getting up in the morning? The world may be divided in both groups. But folks who can't stand getting up or folks who like to get up, there's one thing we all do not like, and that's the sound of the alarm clock. I hate that sound no matter what you change it to. It's a terrible sound. Maybe I'm a morning person who gets up early so that I can avoid that sound. I don't know. But thinking about clocks and alarms and hitting the snooze button to avoid the inevitable reminds me of the fact that it is a great image or a metaphor of, do we tend to be a person who puts things off or jumps right into it? Are we a procrastinator? I saw a t-shirt once that said, top 10 reasons people procrastinate. And the rest of the shirt below it was empty because apparently the person procrastinated and didn't even fill in the rest of the t-shirt. You get the point. Would you confess today if you're a procrastinator? Are you a person who puts things off? As I said, I'm not, and yet I realize that makes me annoying to people who do put things off. I make to-do lists, checklists, and deadlines and datelines, and sometimes I'm way too worried about order, way too worried about getting it done. But something about putting it off has always driven me crazy. Well, we've been talking about choices, and today is the end of this study. We'll move on to other things next time. But the choices we began with were life over death, and this related to the church. Will the church, as the church deals with what comes next, as COVID is still with us, but we're beginning to figure out how to live in this COVID time, and then one day look forward to living after COVID. A church that's going to meet the challenges of the future, which is now, the future is now, has to be a church that votes for life. And that is spelled out in the next choices. We talked about how we needed to choose community over isolation. We needed to choose fun over boredom, bold over mild, frontier over fortress. All of these are choices I believe we're ready to make. So if you're ready now, let's talk about what our choice is now. Our choice today, now over later. Let's get started. Okay, I'm sitting here in the chapel. I love the chapel. Wednesday nights during the pre-COVID days, we gathered every Wednesday night and we had Bible study in here. I love this room. And I look forward to when we can be in here again doing Bible study. When I think about now versus later, I see that what this may be like. Coming back here on Wednesday nights, perhaps when we feel safe and we can do so, we may be having Bible study in here sort of like we used to, but not like we used to. Maybe we'll have a camera in the room. We've ordered a special camera that allows us to stream live. Maybe that camera will be in the room, is what I'm thinking, and folks can join us at home and participate. Maybe there will be additional pieces to the Wednesday night Bible study to prepare you for the next week that are released online. Who knows? But an integrated approach of technology, but yet the personal contact that we are missing so much. Because the truth is, the future is what we're planning for. Now or later is the question, and it's now. We can't say, well, in 10 years we'll do that, or we'll form a study group and see what we need to do. We'll get to that someday, preacher. We can't. The world is moving. The world is moving fast. The future is now. Olu Brown is a United Methodist Church pastor who really impresses me. He serves a church in Atlanta, Georgia, and it is a new church, maybe a dozen years old, and it is already in the top 100 largest, fastest growing churches in the United Methodist Church. Bright young man. And he says that the future, that the world rather, they talk about the world shifting, that the world shifts or changes now every 7 seconds. And he's right, it happens. You get the newest piece of technology and it's already outdated before you get it out of the box. And changes and trends are happening fast. Toys R Us, my son's favorite store chain, closed a few years ago. He was very upset by that. It's hard to believe because that was once the go-to place for toys. It's hard to believe that Toys R Us didn't make it. Studies have shown that 2 major reasons why some people say that Toys R Us went kaput: competition and debt. Competition, the internet, the technology immediately allowed for cheaper, other more affordable options. I mean, it just opened the world where you didn't have to drive to the toy store. You suddenly could click a button. And so Toys R Us couldn't keep up. In debt, they had so much debt, and they got behind, and once you get behind, you get more behind and more behind. So thinking about church that way, we say, is that really the dangers that we have? And absolutely. competition in the sense of not other churches. It's not so much that we're not at competition with the Presbyterian Church or the Methodist Church or Massonites Baptist. No, there's plenty of people in our community that could go to church and fill up all of our churches. And we're all in God's work, so we're not competing. The competition we face is everything else. Sunday morning at 11 was chosen to fit an agricultural time of church, when people could get to the church house, get their wagons and their horses there, could get to it. And back then they spent the day at church and they had dinner on the grounds and they came home. Sunday now, people get up, they play ball, they travel, they're busy. It's another Saturday. My kids, when they were little and we were on vacation and we weren't at church, they called Sunday one time a bonus Saturday. Well, the whole world sees Sunday as a bonus Saturday. It's a long weekend, and so for them to, in the middle of a day where they're not working, to have to come to church, that is becoming a challenge now. People's time is limited, their resources are limited, but they are busy and mobile, and that 11 o'clock is fastly becoming a challenging time. And nobody says you have to worship at 11. It's not in the Bible. Now, don't watch this and say, well, Derek's proposing we do this or that. No, I'm just saying that is something people are talking about in church life, and many churches are adapting to that and looking at other ways and other means in which to connect with people. And debt. You can't avoid all debt. This is the world we live in. It takes money to make money in business, and in church we have to spend money. But the institutional structures which denominations and churches have are expensive to support. It's expensive. A lot of bills go into keeping a building going. We started with a house, then we got a chapel, which I'm in right now, education building, sanctuary and connector building. And if we had to build all this today with the people we have, with what it would cost, that would be astronomical. I was in a giant church recently that has a small congregation, and they're wonderful people. But I was looking at the beautiful artwork and the wonderful building it was, and I know that the current membership of that church could not have built that building. In fact, very few churches, if any church I know, could do that. I don't think I could think of one church that its current membership could probably rebuild what they have. And so to maintain that and to keep that going sometimes drains money that could be used for resources like ministry and mission work and bringing in people and outreach. And that's a reality. And so if the debt gets too big, many churches and denominations now are struggling, particularly now with all these changes in the economy and all the challenges. Okay, so what do we do? Well, some churches say, well, when we get our budget, when we get more money in our budget, then we're going to do that. We got to catch up, and then once we get ahead, we'll do it. Some say when we get bigger and we have more members. When we get a new pastor, get rid of old Derek. Let's get a new preacher. But no, when we get a new pastor, we add the right staff, or we add more staff. When we get more organized, when younger people start coming to church, when we can finish this year-long study on strategic planning, then we'll be ready. When the community grows, if more jobs would come into our community, if more people would move into our town, then we'll grow. Folks, those excuses are not going to cut it. Most of them are unreasonable and they don't work. Just like when individual Christians say, when I get out of school, I'll do that. Or when I retire, or after kids, or when, or later. Later doesn't happen. So the church, God's church, has to say, no, now. Now is the kingdom work. We're not putting it off. We're going to do what God is asking us to do. Let's get at it. Okay. Now, having said what I said about us being a now church, that we're not going to put things off, let me talk. We got to dig into this a little bit. I want to look at the Gospel of Luke and the Gospel of Matthew. I want to talk about some things. I want to really get practical about church life, and I want to talk about our church. So if you're ready, let's get started. I'm in a Sunday school room, a place of learning, and in fact, I'm going to move to at least another classroom or two as we go along this journey, just to remind us of this discipleship that we do at Randolph Memorial. Okay, first up, this does not mean that we go half prepared and fly by the seat of our pants. We got to do it now, so let's just do it. Let's go do it. That sounds good, but there's work that has to be done to make it happen. For us to get back in the sanctuary, we did all the ministry online. We began to expand what we were doing, but we knew we needed to get back physically here, and so 2 weeks ago we felt it was now time to get that rolling. In fact, the first thing we did 3 weeks ago, I think it was, or whatever it was, several weeks ago, we did the drive-through church to kind of get people back on the property. Then we voted, and then we launched into this date, this past Sunday, and we had a lot of work to do to get that to happen. We needed the time to get organized, how to clean and how we're going to sit people and get the musicians organized. We had a lot of work to do, but we didn't wait and say, well, we'll do this, and talk about it for 6 months. I mean, the need was now, but we had to get the work done. And the gospel talks about that. In Luke chapter 14, Jesus says, suppose one of you, we're going to start with verse 28. Luke 14, 28 through 33. Suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Will he not first sit down and estimate the cost to see if he has enough money to complete it? For if he lays the foundation and is not able to finish it, everyone who sees it will ridicule him, saying, this fellow began to build and was not able to finish. Or suppose a king is about to go to war against another king. Will he not first sit down and consider whether he is able with 10,000 men to oppose the one coming against him with 20,000? If he is not able, he will send a delegation while the other is still a long way off and will ask for terms of peace. In the same way, any of you who does not give up everything he has cannot be my disciple. So what you see here is Jesus is clear. There's work to be done, but we're foolish if we just launch into it without planning. He talks about how you've got to think about it. He says, if you're going to build a tower, you sit down and you figure out all the things you need to do to get that built, right? If you're going to build a picnic table, you got to do the measurements and you got to buy the supplies. You've got to do it. And if you're going to go to war, you figure out the plans and the methods, and otherwise you're going to lose. It's very clear that we do it, but we do it right, or at least we do it effectively and as efficiently as we can. And so the church has to figure out how. But please, here, we got to do it. We can't put it off. It's got to be done, but we've got to, once we just make a mission, we've got to roll and we've got to move forward. And as Ulu Brown says, the world shifts every 7 seconds, so we've got to move fast. All right. Matthew 9, verses 35 through 38 says, Jesus went through all the towns and villages, teaching in their synagogues, preaching the good news of the kingdom, and healing every sickness and disease. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them because they were harassed and helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest, therefore, to send out workers into the harvest field. So what we see here is that Jesus is a now church. A late church puts off, gives excuses, and never does anything. A late church comes up with reasons why things won't work and waits and waits and waits. In the end, a late church may die or spin its wheels forever. But Jesus is calling us to be a now church. So what's that about? I just read to you what it's about. Are you ready? Here's what a now church is. A now church sees the needs and in effect sees the people. Jesus is going around towns and villages preaching and teaching. He's healing. He's doing kingdom work. Suddenly he, quote unquote, sees the crowd. Jesus has seen the crowds throughout his whole ministry. This is not the first crowd, but at this moment he sees them with different eyes. He is moved to compassion. It says that he sees them and he's moved to compassion. And that's why he did what he did. Not just to prove he's the Son of God, but because he cared about people. He really cared. Are we looking? We drive up and down the highway, we go to Food Line and Walmart, we're everywhere. But are we looking? Are we seeing the people? And then when we see the needs, are we then moving by compassion to do something about the needs? Truth is, all around us, people are in need. People are vulnerable. People are hurting. That's why Randolph Memorial was started when it was started. Many churches were started in the same time period this church was. There are certain periods in history where lots of buildings were built. A mission fervor was going on. This church was planted because some Christians saw that there was a need. They saw the need for people to have a church in this part of Amherst County, and they were moved by compassion, and they did it. As we are looking at what our churches in these changing days, we need to do the same. We need to move with compassion, because we see the needs. And as I said, that is because number one, we see the people. Number two, we feel the needs. And Jesus felt that compassion. He felt their needs. When's the last time we longed to help someone? I bet it was today, because this church is always looking out to help people, to match need and person together and resources and all that. And I'm glad, but we can't stop, particularly as the needs are going to shift and change as we go through this period of COVID and into what's next, and as the world is just changing so fast. James White said, quote, church growth consultant Win Arn has observed something even more disturbing. Arn conducted a survey in which he interviewed the members of nearly 1,000 churches in regard to what they perceived to be the mission of the church. 89% said the church exists, quote, to take care of my family and my needs. unquote. Only 11% said it existed to win the world to Christ. This points out to a disturbing reality. Many churches fail to have any sense of mission at all, and those that do may fall far short of having a mission that is biblical in its scope, unquote. I don't know when that survey was done, but even if it's even half or even a third of that, it would be troubling today, because the fact is we don't exist we're not a club that we join and then the club's duty is just to take care of us. No, we are a mission outpost reaching others with God's love. William Booth signed the guest book for King Edward VII. He summed up his life's work. This is the founder of the Salvation Army. He said, quote, "Your Majesty, some men's ambition is art, some men's ambition is fame, some men's ambition is gold. My ambition is the souls of men," unquote. Got to know what our goal is. So we see the people, we feel the needs. He saw the crowds, he was moved by compassion, and then finally we meet the needs. Jesus would then heal, he would then meet the needs, he would help. He saw them as helpless and harassed, he saw their needs. The word helpless means to be burdened, it means to be overwhelmed. And I don't want to be gross, but the word for harassed is the same word you use to be tortured and flayed alive, removing skin. I'm sorry. So helpless and harassed would mean overly burdened and skinned alive. That's how those people felt. No, they weren't literally, but you know what I mean. Do you feel that way? You feel like somebody's just been peeling your skin off and beating the tar out of you? Run down and run over and run back over and run back over again? That's how they felt. Jesus saw that they were as beat up as they could be. They were in pain. A woman's husband had been slipping in and out of coma for several months, yet she stayed by his bedside every single day. When he came to, he motioned for her, and she sat beside him. He said, "You know what? You've been with me through the bad times. When I got fired, you were there to support me. When my business failed, you were there. When I got shot, you were there by my side. When we lost the house, you gave me support. When my health started failing, you were still by my side. You know what?" "Yes, dear," she said. He looked at her and said, "I think you bring me bad luck." That's a bad joke, I know. But gosh, do you ever feel like that guy? Shot, beat up, run over, and you're trying to figure out whose fault is this? Well, without Jesus, that's how we'll feel. Total misery. Yet Jesus is one who is with us. In fact, Jesus said they were sheep without a shepherd. That's how they felt. They were sheep with no shepherd. And we've talked a lot about sheep and shepherds, so I won't go into all that today. But you get it. They were like, they had no leadership. No, when a people have failed or no leadership, it just falls apart into chaos. He saw their needs, and he saw he could meet them. So that's a now church. A now church sees, feels, and then meets. And let me say that again. A now church sees, feels, and now meets. That's something, isn't it? Let's talk about what we're going to do next. Let's talk about how this is going to apply even more practically to church life today. Okay, so this book that I've used for this study, I Refuse to Lead a Dying Church, is interesting. There's a sequel to it called We Refused to Lead a Dying Church, where there were case studies of churches that made some major change and transformation and moved forward, and it was fascinating too. I'm also reading a book called 4D Church by Ulu Brown that I mentioned at the beginning, and I'm going to add, this study ends today. This is the last study of Church After COVID. But I'm going to do a bonus episode that's going to be much shorter, and I'm going to talk about the 4 concepts that Ulu Brown mentions in that book. The problem is I have not finished the book. I'm about halfway through it. So when I finish it, I'm going to just pop out a little bonus episode, and I'm going to talk about the 4 things that this young entrepreneur pastor has based his ministry on as we think about who we need to be. I'll have some more announcements later, but I just want to let you know we got some more material to add to this after today. But I do want to apply some things here. I want to talk seriously. According to this book, I want to talk about some of the things that this book mentioned, and I've tooled it to fit today because it's a 15-year-old book, and he's writing to a church that he dealt with, but I'm thinking about our church and the world. Okay, so first I want to talk about debt. Debt does not hurt the church if it's managed wisely. When I mentioned Toys R Us, that debt was one of the things that killed it, I would call it illy managed, unwise debt, or overwhelming debt. But debt managed wisely is not bad. Churches historically exist. We're not a business, and so we exist to reach people, but we have to be financially smart. At the same time, churches have to go into debt to do things. And so we are currently working on our sanctuary, which is needed. It hasn't had a facelift since 1980. And it's not just being done to be prettier. It's because, like, well, for example, we put the front entrance on. Our church service this past Sunday, we really needed those bathrooms because now people could use those. We could clean them easier. They're handicapped accessible, much easier to clean, and they were meant for this. They're right there. We did not have wheelchair accessible bathrooms in the sanctuary. I mean, they just fit. They are nice, the whole front entrance is, but it fits. The lighting we did, the lighting wiring and all the system hooked up to it went back to 1980. If we're going to have a church, we have to take care of it. And so we're in a process now where the windows, the floor, everything in the sanctuary is needing to be so that it will last for another 50 years in that room. And so so we're going to have to borrow money, but you've been faithful in paying it as we go. We could have building problems, roof, whatever. Debt is going to come up. We just have to use our skills and our talent to make sure that the debt doesn't cripple us from ministry, that we can do both. So I would say that, a church that is now is going to have, and a church that is now is going to spend money. I guess that's my bottom line is, we're going to spend money. We have to buy equipment to meet the needs of a changing culture. We can't do church like we did in 2005, 1995, 1985, and so on and so on. And so we're going to have to spend money to keep things going, to stay efficient and effective. So that's one thing. Second, if we don't reach new people, we're in trouble. I mean, we've got to reach new people. Bottom line, we're not a club. We are a mission, a ministry. Number three, if we wait till we have it perfect, it's going to be too late. I mean, I remember one church I was speaking to years ago, and I said, we need to do this and we need to do that. And they said, well, we want to wait till we get this right. We get it all, we know what we're doing, and then we'll try some outreach. Well, we have to do it as we go. We could not wait to relaunch after COVID. Well, COVID's still going on, but to relaunch a physical presence until we get it perfect. And so Sunday we had to go because we made the decision and we needed to go. And we're going to keep working on it as we go along. When the church closed down as a physical building on March 15th, we moved online. We moved off-site. We couldn't wait until we got it perfect and then announce, okay, we're ready a month or two months later. You needed worship. You needed Bible study. You needed pastoral care. You needed to connect to one another and to God. So we had to, that week, it's been an exhausting journey. It really has. The week right after the 15th was exhausting. I've never been more tired in my life that week or two. And even the week leading up to our on-presence worship, it took a lot of work, but we had to do it because we can't wait. We got to improve as we go. We got to fix it as we move, okay? The metaphor teachers like to use is we're building an airplane while we fly. That's true. We're doing it as we go. Okay. Fourth, if we wait till we have enough workers, it'll never happen. Well, we can't do that because we don't have enough people to do it, Derek. The nominating committee is never going to get 100% yeses. In fact, they're working right now. And I challenge you that if you haven't been asked to do a job or you've been asked and that wasn't where you felt called, to contact me personally and say, where can I be of use? And I'll find a spot for you. Because we need folks to work, but at the same time, we can't wait till we get every slot filled and every job filled. We got to get going. Fifth, we need to improve. We don't have to improve. Some people will say, well, we need to improve and work on the things we've already got before we add anything new. Why do we have to choose? We can continue to improve what we're doing while doing new things. Okay. Number 6, we just can't stop. We can't just get to a point where we're just going through the motions. We can't just, this sounds mean, but it's how I feel. Sometimes I go visit other pastors, other ministers, and I walk in their office. And when I'm in a minister's office, I look at their books and I ask them to see what they're reading now. And if the last book they ever bought was when they were in seminary, and they're just using what they learned in seminary 10, 20, 30 years ago, I know that pastor's in trouble. I told you, I just mentioned a couple, this book I read was 15 years ago, and I'm revisiting it, but I also mentioned a book that was written this year by a fresh up-and-comer that I'm reading and just ingesting, not because we're going to do everything he does, but to learn and get an idea. I do this Festival of Homiletics. I go to this preaching conference every year, and I was so sad when COVID hit because I didn't think I'd get to go. It was supposed to be in Atlanta, Georgia, and they canceled it. Next year's Denver, so I hope next May is better. But what they did was, they were wonderful people, is they launched it online that week. They'd never done that before. And so I've got 35 lectures and sermons. I have 1 year to watch them whenever I want, of some of the top thinkers and preachers that I've heard before or not heard before, that they're from the festival. And I'm so thrilled. I've watched 5 so far. And it'll take me a while, but as I go through it, I'm digesting and thinking. Some of it will fit us, some of it doesn't, some of it just feeds my soul, some of it may not, I mean, it's wonderful. It's stretching and it's making me think, but I can't stop. I got to keep growing. I've never arrived. Until the day you go to be with Jesus, please keep learning. Okay. Number 7, we can study a decision too much. We can talk about it too much. We've got to act. We do need to study. We're going to build that tower, going to take that army in. We need to study. We need to plan. We need to prepare. But then we got to act. When the governor when the governor and the authorities of Virginia announced last week about relaunching and reopening the schools, it's a 125-page manual that was given to the school systems to make sure that they are up to whatever standards are given to them to relaunch this fall. My point in that is to say that they've got to read that. They've got to have a task force. Each school system's got to think, but eventually the school system, faster than they wish, they got to make a decision soon because August is coming. The kids are going to need to be in school in some way. And so they've got to take the information and then they've got to application. Okay? Churches have to do that. And we have to move fast. We cannot afford to spend years talking. We've got to move. And another concern is if we wait until something happens, if we're waiting on something before we act. For example, some churches say, when our community improves with more jobs and families move here, then we'll be able to grow. Or when young people start coming to this church, then we'll be able to do the ministries we need to do. Or when we get more money. Or when we finally finish the sanctuary, then we're going to launch some ministries. Or when we build that building. Or when we get the new bus. Or we get a new preacher and get rid of this old guy. Do you see what I'm saying? That's all kicking the can down the road. God has given us these great resources we have as a church. God has brought me to be your pastor, and I am so blessed to be here, and I'm glad I'm here. God's brought you here. Together, let's do this thing. Let's do the church of now. Let's not say later. We got work to do now. Now. I don't know if you can see, but I'm in the youth room. Behind me is the sign that says, "You belong here." It's my favorite sentence in the entire building, and I love that Cadence has that in here because this is the youth room, and this is where the youth are, and they belong in this church. I was a youth minister for a long time before I became a pastor, and one of the things that always annoyed me was when people said, teenagers are the future of the church. They're not. They're the present. We can learn so much from them. They can be a part. They are. In our church, they serve. They're active. My son, who's going into the youth group, can you believe it? He's going into middle school this fall. He's going to be in middle school. He's going into the youth. He is not the future. He's an usher right now. He is the present. I was so proud of him, the craft videos he did. He did several, and I'm proud of that little fella, and I'm proud of my daughter, and I'm proud of the kids in our church. And I've been blessed to do a Bible study on Zoom with some of our 20-year-olds, early 20-year-olds. And they were kids when I came. Just little kids, and now they're grown-ups and they're going into professions and seeing what a wonderful, what our church has been a part of in development. The youth ministry and the children's ministry are vital. It's not about numbers. It's not about if we have the slickest looking building or it's not about all that. It's about the relationships and the investments that this church has historically had with all the kids and children and youth of the church. So if you're watching this and you know some children or youth, hey, this is a commercial. Bring them. They are the now. And we need to learn, and we can learn from them. When it comes to technology and some of the things we need to do, they are the ones that can help us because that's their native language. Okay, so let's get to this. I want to say to you this, is that around us are people who feel unloved, unwanted, and unhappy all over our community. And that is now, and we need to do something about it. Jesus reminds us that the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. He said that back then. It is still true. It will always be true. But he didn't say put it off. You've got to work with what you got. When a farmer sees the fields ready to be harvested, he feels the need. He meets the need. He doesn't wait or he'll lose his crops. He doesn't say, I'll do it when I get more help. If he has to do it himself, he'll do it. He does the hard work. He makes it happen. He uses the tools he has to complete the mission. Paul Powell, in The Complete Disciple, wrote, quote, "Many churches today remind me of a group of farmers trying to gather in a harvest while they sit in the machine shed. They go to the machine shed every Sunday and they study bigger and better methods of agriculture, sharpen their plows, grease their tractors, and then they get up and go home. Then they come back every Sunday and study bigger and better methods of agriculture, sharpen their plows, grease their tractors, and go home again. They do this week in and week out, year in and year out, and nobody goes into the fields to gather in the harvest." Sounds silly, right? Like it'd be like you're a football team and you go to the workout room and you lift weights and you talk about football and you watch it on TV and you go over your plays and your coach encourages you and they cheer you on, but you never get on the football field. You never play. The church is meant to play. It's meant to it's meant to farm. It's meant to work. Okay, RMBC, I love this church. I'm so glad to be your pastor. And I believe God has worked through our church historically, and I know that we have together accomplished a lot. But we are not perfect. We've always got room to grow. We've always got room to be stronger. We've always got room to strengthen ourselves, as I said, to dream new dreams, to be the church that our world needs. And so I would just say to you that we are in a different time. As I think about this, we are in a time that none of us could have imagined. And when it first happened, when we first shut down the building, even though we didn't stop being a church, I thought maybe a couple weeks, then a month, and then we saw it was going to be a while. We're still not completely back. I mean, we've only had one in-person service, two in one day, a 9 and 11, which is different. That is different. What we did this past Sunday was totally different from what we've done as a church in a long time. I know years ago you had 2 services, but not under these situations. We are adapting. We are figuring it out, and each week it'll be that way. We'll have to be flexible. We'll have to work together. But I don't think things ever, when people say, well, they get back to normal, things are never normal. Things always change. The church today, or the church on March 15th was not the church of March 15th of last year or the year before that. New people come into our church, people we love, go on to be with God, move away, move their membership. Other people join. I mean, children grow up. Church is moving forward chapter by chapter every day. And the needs around us, the culture changes, and we have to figure out how we're going to adapt to that culture. The world's that's just the way the world is. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's not that, it's just the way it is. The world doesn't sit still. And so our church has to constantly adjust, has to constantly think about where we are, recenter ourselves, and look for new ways to connect. The mission doesn't change. The mission was from Jesus, which was to love God and love others. And you show your love for God by loving others. So we embrace Christ, we become a Christian, we trust in Christ, we follow Christ, and then that is lived out as Christians by loving God and loving others. I know it sounds simple, but that's what Jesus said, and that's what it's all about. That's how we live out our Christian faith, our trust in Christ. So if that's what we're all about, if that's what we're doing, the methods and the means and the steps of doing that, we'll always adjust and change. It's just what happens. And so that's what we're going to do together. And this church after COVID doesn't mean that now I announce COVID is over. I wish I could. Now we're starting to open the door, and I know we're wondering when Sunday school and youth and children, I know all that. We got virtual VBS. That's going to be exciting. But as we go through all this, I'll just say to you that together we'll find the way. But we will not wait. We will not put it off. We will just keep looking at what's up now. How do we meet it? Let's keep going, and let's dream some dreams. All right, just a couple of announcements, and then I'm going to close with this video. Last week's went way too long. I hope this one's not as long as last week. What I would say to you is we are finished with this study. I'm going to put out a little, I don't know when, but I'm going to put out a little extra bonus feature where I do a very short kind of discussion of the book I just read to kind of give you some insights that I've gained from it. And then I'm going to take there may be a little break there where we don't have a study for a week or two. I might take a week or so off, just to have maybe have a noon prayer or something. I don't know, we'll see. But in July, when when Bible school starts, all 4 Mondays of July, there will be a Jonah Vacation Bible School. Every Monday, the children can tune in, and there'll be a special program on Facebook sessions 1 through 4, 4 weeks. You're welcome to watch it. I encourage you as adults to watch it to see what's happening. There'll be an intro, there'll be a song, there'll be a Bible lesson, there'll be a craft, there'll be craft packs kids can pick up before Bible school. So that's going to go on for 4 Mondays. Great outreach opportunity. Get the kids and grandkids to register. It's going to be fun. For you adults, on Wednesday or middle of the week or so, I'm going to release an adult Bible study on Jonah. So whatever the kids are learning, I'm going to take the same concepts and do a Bible study so that the whole church is thinking about Jonah. So that'll be our next study. So there'll be kind of a bonus feature soon and some other stuff, but they're kind of a break, and then we're going to jump right into Jonah in July, which is right around the corner. It may not be much of a break, but right in July we'll do Jonah, and then I don't know what's next. The one thing this has all taught me is I'm a long-range planner, and I can't do that anymore because I don't know what August looks like. So I'm taking it month by month, sometimes day by day. But we will keep doing ministry. We'll keep looking at ways to connect. Let's close this study in prayer if you'll join me. The gracious God, I thank you for those who are here studying and growing and learning and thinking about the church that we are, the church that we've been, and the church you want us to become. We're grateful that we don't have to do this by ourselves. We're grateful that we've got your power and strength, and we give thanks. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit we pray. And all God's people say, Amen.